Welcome to another edition of the ICU Video Virtual Roundtable. My name is Wyatt Zieger, and today I'm honored to present a very special guest. He had the number one ranked team in the country in the AJHL before the shutdown. He'll be heading into his fifth season as head coach of the Sherwood Park Crusaders. Please welcome Adam Manah. Adam, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Wyatt.
Let's jump right into last season. As I mentioned, you had the number one ranked team in the CJHL. Your team finished the regular season 49-9. 48 of those wins came in regulation, which almost seems unfathomable. I think what that shows is your ability to keep a group focused through 60 minutes, but how hard is that to do when adversity strikes after rolling through teams sometimes 5-1, 6-1, 7-0?
Well, it was always a challenge day in and day out, but we had a tremendous leadership group, and we really took a lot of stock into that we had a group of returning players that have been through it before and have been through the grind of not only the regular season but the playoffs as well, and we learned a lot from the postseason in 2018 and 2019. And for us it was kind of, we were joking around about it late in the year, because we were like, can you believe we have this many wins and we haven't went to overtime or a shootout once? And then all of a sudden it just came at the snap of a finger. So it's funny, once you start to talk about it, all of a sudden it falls into place. But it really puts perspective on the year that we had and how impressive our hockey team was, and obviously Kyle Chase did a really good job in putting it together and adding the complement pieces that we needed to make sure that we were deep enough up front on the back end and in the pipes. And it just speaks volumes to how good and how deep we were throughout our lineup, and we were able to just roll and really give teams problems 5-on-5.
Yeah, it seemed like a team all the way from Will Zappernick to Arjun Atwal. You could roll four lines and be comfortable out there, but two players on your squad who a lot of people I think are intrigued in are your 2020 eligible draw prospects, Carter Savoy and Michael Benning. What's it like from a head coaching perspective, answering calls from scouts and trying to sell your players to teams?
Well, I mean, with the group that we had this year and even the past couple of years, it's gotten easier and easier to promote our guys and to really to sell not only our program but the players itself, and for our for guys like Benning and Savoy, I mean, we've fielded a ton of calls from NHL scouts, and I guess for them, I mean, the sky's the limit on where they're going to go and where they're going to head in the next few years. But while they've been a part of our organization, I mean, we obviously have nothing but good things to say about them. I mean, both put in a ton of work, whether it's before practice, after practice, off the ice. I mean, they, even though they were 16, 17 years old with us, it looked like they were 20-year-olds, or maybe even, maturer than that. So, those are easy things to tell NHL guys that continue to call and want info on them. But the biggest things they want to know is what kind of people they are, and the player comes second. So their character is paramount and through the roof, and that's why they're the people and players they are today. And they're, like I said, they're only going to get better as their career moves forward.
Starting with Carter, if I was an NHL scout, 50 goal scorers are hard to come by no matter what league you play in. But what other areas of his game do you think are going to translate really well into the NHL?
Well, just his competitive nature. I mean, when people watch him, sometimes they wonder if he's going, 100, working hard 100% of the time. And really, if you don't get to watch Carter day in and day out, and his work ethic, his work habits, I mean, they're tremendous every single day. And that's really a coach's dream on my end, because you really don't have to say too much to those guys. I mean, you can guide them here and there, but for Carter, I mean, it's his competitive nature, how he protects the puck, his physical stature and nature. I mean, he's definitely not afraid of not only mixing it up but finishing checks, and he takes a lot of pride in his play with the puck and play without the puck. So some of those things will definitely translate as he moves up, and I think they'll surprise some people as he goes, because, I mean, like I said, we we saw it on a daily basis where, some people didn't. And that's something that he really takes, pride in.
Now, when you look at Michael, what makes him stand out above his peer group? And what type of NHL defenseman could you see him becoming?
Well, he's definitely going to be a power play guy that can be that quarterback at the top. And for Mike, you could even compare him to a guy like Cale Makar. I mean, he doesn't have the size that Makar has, but he's got a lot of the same attributes and skills to his game where he skates well, he moves the puck extremely well. He's a pass first guy. But has really developed his shot in the last year, and credit Jeff Wojcicki on our back end for really working with Mike and telling him to bear down on his shots. There was times where in the first year he'd have pucks roll off his stick and maybe wouldn't get it off, but in the second year, I mean, he was ripping pucks from the point and really creating an element on our power play that we lacked in the past couple of years, where we had a guy at the top that was really just a passer, but now. When Mike could step into a one-timer, I mean, you knew it was either going in or it was getting deflected or creating a rebound. So, all good things for our power play, and that's one of the reasons why we were in the top 3 in the league. But Mike, could be right along those lines of a Makar in terms of what he brings skill-wise and skating-wise, and then just the way he thinks the game. I mean, his hockey sense is incredible in terms of how he gets himself out of dangerous spots on the ice and how he's able to escape pressure and just elude guys with his body language and his smarts alone.
There is some belief, in Sherwood Park Crusaders fans might be happy to hear this, that the Oilers might try to take a swing at one, if not both of them. Does it give you any satisfaction knowing that the big club in the city has not been only keeping a close eye on your players, but your team as well? And how important is that for recruiting the future of the Crusaders?
Well, yeah, we saw a lot of NHL teams at a lot of our games this year, which kind of speaks again to the group that we had and how many players were in that NHL let alone Carter and Mike. But I did see a tweet come out from, I think it was Jim Matheson, saying could the Oilers trade up and go after Savoy, let alone Benning too. So. I mean, it should be interesting to see what they want to do. They were out at a ton of our games. They like both players very much. So, I guess time will tell with, how they're going to approach the draft and I guess, where their picks land and how they want to use them.
Another player in your team I'd be remiss not to mention is Arjun Atwal. He was the AJHL MVP. He's nominated for CJHL Player of the Year after eclipsing 100 points. He has just committed to the University of Calgary. How much will his presence be missed, and what has he meant to the team?
Oh, Arj defines what a Sherwood Park Crusader player should look like. I mean, he's been with us for 4 years. The first couple of years, he was up and down in the Western League with Victoria and Saskatoon, and I mean, every time he came back, you could have looked at him and said, well, he could just kind of get down on himself and kind of just throw in the towel type thing, but. Arj was bound and determined to continue to prove to everybody that despite his size and stature, being probably one of the smallest guys in the leagues, that he is one of the most fearless, tenacious guys in our lineup. And anybody that's come to watch us play, I mean, sees that Arj leads the way. I mean, not only with his leadership skills on and off the ice, but just by his work ethic and how contagious it is with our group and how he puts everybody ahead of himself first and makes sure that guys are, pulling the rope and making sure that we're all on the same page. And Arj, I mean, despite along with his work ethic and how hard he competes, I mean, his skill set is unbelievable. I mean, 107 points in 54 games. And, he was a plus 62 on our team this year. So he also takes pride in playing, really good hockey defensively away from the puck, and the UFC is getting a very good player in Arjun, and he's not only going to make them better on the ice, but he's going to be a terrific citizen away from the rink, and that could go a very long way for their program as well.
Another player leaving your squad next year is Carter Gylander. He was drafted last year by the Detroit Red Wings in the 7th round. He's going to Colgate next season. How hard is it going to be to fill that void in net?
Well, we had a really good tandem with Carter and Jordan Fry. And Jordan, when Carter was gone in December at the World Junior A Challenge, I mean, Jordan stepped in and did a fantastic job for us. I mean, won some tough games against Okotoks, Spruce Grove, and some other opponents along the way. So we're confident that Jordan's going to step in and do a job. I mean, he's going to be a 20-year-old next year. He's very focused, determined. He kind of saw what it was like to play, right alongside Carter this year. And Carter was mentored by Matt Berlin, who's with the U of A Golden Bears now, the year before. So, I mean, we've been very fortunate in net to have, the character and the guys that we've had, not only again in the room, but, how good of goalies they've been on the ice. And it's a huge piece that we're going to lose in Carter. But we're not really surprised that Carter's ready to go to Colgate after 2 years with us because, when you look at him in the net, I mean, his size, his stature, how athletic he is, and he's just a game changer out there. So it's unfortunate that he wasn't able to prove what he wanted to do, prove to not only himself, but to our team, to the league, that he was the top goalie for a reason and that he was going to lead us a long way in the playoffs.
How hard was it to talk to the players afterwards, knowing that they never really got to take that shot, especially for all the ones graduating this year?
Well, it wasn't easy. The tough part for us was, and I know you've talked to a couple other of the coaches in the North Division already, but the tough part for us was that we were practicing on March 13th, March 12th, expecting to start on March 13th against Drayton Valley. And we were kind of all trying to stay positive. We were, we talked about it that day after practice saying, yeah, it's not looking so good. Stay close to your phones. We'll kind of update you as we get more updates. And then, in a flash, it was over. I mean, it was postponed and then it was canceled. And, the disappointment from our guys. I mean, we know some guys were in tears, especially our 20-year-olds. Because they've worked really hard for this the last 2 or 3 years that they've been with us, and even the guys that we brought in, throughout the year, like a Jacob Kendall, those kind of guys, didn't get a shot at a run, and I think genuinely our team knew that we had a legit chance of making a push and making a run, and obviously it wasn't going to be easy, but the work that we put in all year, I mean, those guys deserve all the credit in the world with what they've been able to do, and so I guess just to finish that point, we didn't even get a chance to really have a final send-off, a team meeting. We just had to call them, and we kind of gave our guys a little bit of a breather for a week or two before we called them because obviously it was devastating for everybody involved. So there's not much you can really say in terms of how sad it was for our group and our fans and the organization itself.
For the players who are going to return next year and are going to have another shot at the AJHL title, what one of those players that maybe wasn't a key part of your team last season do you think is ready to make a big step next year?
Well, there could be a lot of guys that step up. I mean, you look at a guy like Ty Mueller, he's going to be on the NHL draft radar next year. He put up 30 points in 50 games this year and again was a very reliable guy down the middle for a 16-year-old that we expect to step up big as a 17-year-old next year. But you got your supporting cast as well behind him with guys like Tanner Finkarek, who's now been with us for 2 years. Blake Sidlowski, Nick Magus, Bryce Bader, Vinny Scott. I mean, all those guys will be very heavily relied upon as returning guys, and we've signed a lot of letter of intents to guys that are going to be coming in as future guys for us, and on the back end, I mean, you look at guys like Ty Ettinger, who we acquired from the Fort McMurray Oil Barons at the deadline. He's going to be a 20-year-old next year. That's going to be heavily relied upon as well, along with Brendan McDonald, who's from Tampa, Florida, and he was actually a guy that called us last week saying, "Hey, coach, yeah, we're back in the rinks already. I don't know about you guys up in Canada, but we're able to skate." And we're like, well, yeah, we're not even close to that. But So he's lucky he's getting to stay on the ice, and you go down the list with Matthew Shatsky, Kevin Manah, Connor Hart he had 10 goals in the regular season and another 10 in the preseason. So 20 goals as a D-man coming back is going to be hopefully the guy that's going to step in on your power play and kind of fill the void for Benning, but be a different element than Benning, where Hardy's more of a shooter, and not to say he can't be the setup guy either, but Mike could do both, and we kind of rely on Hardy to be that guy that blasts pucks from the point. So you got a lot of guys on that list, and we feel very confident that our group will be just fine coming back, and that we're hoping to get back to where we were this past year next year as quick as we can.
Hopping into the time machine a little bit, you took the radio and television program at NAIT. What made you make that decision, and what did you want to do when you got into it? Was it coaching?
Well, I kind of had a feeling you'd kind of go down that road with a question, but it was kind of funny because when I was young, I mean, you could ask my parents, my brother, my sister, they kind of always laughed because I'd always do the play-by-play when I was gaming, playing NHL, 94, 98 as I grew up, and I always wanted to kind of be the play-by-play guy, whether it was on the radio or on TV. And then when I graduated, playing junior A for the Oil Barons, the focus was to go to NAIT and go to school and obtain my diploma in radio and television arts. And then halfway through, I was at the gym the one day and I got asked by a good friend of mine. His name's Tino Greco, and I'll always bring this up. He was the guy that said, "Hey, I'm coaching a Pee Wee AA team. Would you want to help out? Have you ever given coaching a thought?" And I was kind of, at the time, I was like, "No, not at all." Like, I kind of just finished playing and I was concentrating on going to school, and school was going really well. I had good marks, way better than I did in high school. And that was probably because I was actually focused on just school alone. But yeah, so I started to help him out. And then by Christmas time, he said, "Why don't you just take over the team? I mean, you're very passionate. You're very driven. You clearly like, teaching the kids and helping the kids." And so he passed along the reins to me, and then I fell in love with it. And I ended up finishing up radio and television arts, and luckily for me, was able to call the brick tournament that year that I finished school, and then I fell in love with that as kind of as a plan B. So I've been very lucky to continue to do that every summer, and then coach now for the last 10 years, and it's kind of been both have been a very integral part of my life, and I'm lucky to do both. So I have fun with doing both of them. So hopefully that will just continue into the future, and I'm able to do coaching as number one and the play-by-play as number two.
You just mentioned the brick tournament. I just read a fantastic piece on The Athletic about the oral history of that, which was mostly about that 2011 tournament, which ended up having 14 of the first 30 picks in the NHL draft. But you've been involved in the brick tournament for a number of years now. Were you disappointed to hear that it's not going to return this summer? And do you have a favorite moment of calling games at the Ice Palace?
Ooh, yeah, well, yeah. I guess first of all, it's very disappointing that the tournament won't be going, because it does provide so much history with the types of players that have come through, in the last 40 some years. But in terms of what's going on in the world, I mean, I guess we weren't really that surprised that the tournament was canceled, let alone everything else in the summer. So it's going to be a little bit of a weird 2020. In the off season here, and some things that usually keep myself busy, let alone a lot of other people, are going to be thrown off. But I mean, in terms of a favorite moment, I've done it for 10 years now. There's probably a lot. There's been a lot of good, a lot of great games that I've been able to call, especially, it's funny with Rob and Dave kind of, running ICU video productions, and them being my camera guys for a lot of those games, especially early on. It was probably a lot of the overtime games for sure, and then some of the interviews I was able to do along the way, especially early on, because that was something that they focused on. And I remember being able to interview Todd Bertuzzi and and Pierre Maguire and some of the guys that have come through the tournament. And Bertuzzi was hilarious because, he towered over me, in the interview, and I was basically looking up at him the whole time. So, but great guy. And Pierre Maguire actually, was the reason why I'm able to get through the brick tournament, to this day, because he introduced me to the Ricolas, the lemon drops, because, my voice would just take an absolute beating, calling 2 or 3 games a day. So, fortunately, I've learned a lot along the way, and I've been very thankful to the people that have put me in positions to have success, not only on the coaching side, but on the play-by-play side as well.
As far as the play-by-play side, if you want a good remedy, I go green tea, 2 honey. I did 8 games in 3 days, and I felt completely fine afterwards. So that's my trick.
Well, but, I was testing out the green tea early on without the Ricolas, and it didn't seem to help. But I think maybe if I combine that with the Ricolas, I think it could be the right mix for sure.
It's a deadly combo. So just a couple more here before I let you go. In the AJA, there's a MVP, there's a Defenseman of the Year, Goaltender of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and I know the Crew has an amazing broadcast team. Brendan Escott, someone I got to learn under while I was at Nate. Would you like to see a Broadcaster of the Year introduced into the AJHL to help promote some of the guys behind the scenes as well?
Well, I think there's a lot of maybe awards that could be introduced. I mean, you see some of the awards that come out in the Western Hockey League with the marketing award, and then maybe introduce the GM award. I mean, some teams in the AJHL have a split role which is what we have with myself being the head coach, assistant GM, and then Kyle Chase being our general manager. And then other teams have the head coach GM attached to it, such as Eric Thurston and Sean Martin that you've interviewed recently as well. So, I mean, there could be the GM of the year, there could be the marketing director of the year. Like you said, there could be the broadcaster of the year. So they could definitely venture out. And I think, from my perspective or my opinion, I think it would be good if they ventured out. I mean, it's to give more people a little bit more recognition and show what they've been able to do, not only behind the scenes, but to what they're doing, on a daily basis to make the program successful. And that goes unnoticed sometimes with how hard it is to be able to run a junior A program and to run it well. So there's a lot of people that deserve not only a big thank you, but maybe that extra recognition that could go a long way with, giving them the support that they want and that they need for what they do.
Thanks, Adam. One last one here. So if you were introduced to somebody who maybe hadn't seen an AJHL game before, how would you sell it to them?
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. You see all the numbers in the NHL that are coming out with how many guys are going the NCAA route, and that's definitely not to say that the Western Hockey League route is. I mean, it's a good route. Either route is a very good route to go. But with how many guys are going the NCAA route to not only get their schooling while they continue to play hockey between the ages of 18 to 23, and then give them that little bit extra time to develop, could go a long way. And I mean, a lot of guys are benefiting from that before they take that next jump to the American Hockey League or whatever it is. But for the league itself, it's a terrific league to watch. I mean, you have speed, you have skill, you have guys that can do it all essentially and play whatever type of game you want them to play. And that's where we consider our league very deep in terms of, the teams that make runs every year, such as your Brookses, your Okotoks, Spruce, and the teams that have been able to go and make it to the final, even Whitecourt in that mix in the last few years. And now ourselves is that you really need teams that can skate, that have skill, that have a lot of hockey sense, and that can really move the puck and put on a really good entertainment show for the fans that come and watch. And I mean, our team has been a prime example of that the last 2 years. That we've been producing the best players, not only from the organization standpoint, but we're moving them on to bigger and better things with scholarships and everything else. So it's a terrific league, and hopefully, this little setback with the pandemic won't deter people from coming to watch, and hopefully it continues to pick up right where it left off when we get back.
I sure hope not either. I'm really missing hockey, and it's only May. Thanks for joining me today, Adam. I really appreciate this interview.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and thanks again. And hopefully, hockey will be back sooner rather than later.
Fingers crossed.